Think about the last subscription you signed up for. You probably don't remember the annual cost. You remember the monthly number, Netflix, Spotify, your car payment, your gym membership. Every recurring cost in your life has been quietly repackaged into a monthly figure. And honestly, that framing didn't come from nowhere. We didn't arrive at it on our own, it was handed to us. When you sat down with your lender, they ran the monthly payment calculation. When your realtor showed you listings, they led with the estimated monthly. When you called your parents the night before closing, they asked if you could handle the payment. When you told your friends, they asked the same question. Every single person in your orbit, every system designed to help you buy a home, all pointing at the same number. So when you sat at that closing table and asked the question you've been trained to ask, that felt responsible. That felt disciplined. That felt financially mature. And it is responsible for a monthly cost. But here's the thing nobody told you: a house is not a monthly cost. A house is a 20-year asset running on life cycle timelines. And when you evaluate a 20-year asset on a 30-day cycle, you will eventually feel like something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. You just zoomed in too far. See, here's what's happening inside almost every house that nobody bothers to discuss during the transaction. When a house is built, the systems go in together: the roof, the HVAC, the water heater, the appliances, all installed within a few years of each other. And that matters because they don't fail randomly across 30 years. They age together in the same direction on overlapping timelines, which means there is a window, usually somewhere between years 10 and 20 of a home's life, where multiple major systems reach the end of life within the same 5 to 7 year span. Now, I call this the convergence window. And the convergence window is where most of the debt lives, not because anything went catastrophically wrong, because multiple predictable things arrived at the same time, and no money was waiting for any of them. Let me give you a real house to follow. Purchased in 2014, built in 2003. Everything original except the water heater. That was replaced around 2010. Cost $285,000. Solid down payment. 30-year mortgage. They felt prepared. 4 years in, 2018. The HVAC is now 15 years old. Starts struggling in July. They call a technician out. Diagnosis: mechanical wear, end of life. Repair costs would approach the replacement. So they replace it. $8,500. They didn't have $8,500 set aside, so it goes on the home equity line. And here's the part I want you to notice, because I've seen this thought process 100 times. They figure, that was one big one. Next few years, it'll be quieter. But it won't be. In 2020, the roof develops a leak. Now, the house at this point is 17 years old. The shingles have exceeded their life-effective lifespan. A patch holds for 18 months, but by 2022, full replacement. You can't defer it anymore. $13,500. Another draw on the credit line. Also, in 2022, the dishwasher fails. The refrigerator starts making noise. Both are replaced. $3,200. 2023, the water heater is 13 years old and it fails. Another $1,900. End of 2023, 9 years, $27,000 in system replacements, nearly all of it on debt. And this is when people start reaching for certain phrases. They call the house a money pit. They wonder if they bought a lemon. They tell everyone it's been one thing after another. And sometimes they even call the contractor a scam. Now, I want to stop on that one for a second. You called them on a Saturday in July, asked them to drop everything. Emergency rates exist because you created the emergency. The contractor is not the villain here. Here's what's actually happening with all of these phrases. They're moving the cause of the problem onto the house or onto the contractor or onto bad luck. Because if the house is the problem, it's a luck problem. And luck problems don't have solutions. But here's the reality. There was nothing wrong with the house. The HVAC was 15 years old. For an HVAC, that's not bad luck. That's the end of the road. The roof was 17 years old. It's not a lemon, a life cycle completing itself on schedule. The debt didn't happen because something went wrong. The debt happened because the mental model treated predictable costs as unforeseeable events. Monthly payment thinking can't see life cycle costs. It's not built to. Now, let's rewind that same house, same property, same system, same 2014 purchase. But this time, before closing, you ask a different question. What will the house require? So you listed the major systems: roof, estimated 25 years life; HVAC, 15 years; your water heater, 10 to 12 years. You estimated conservative replacement costs: roof, $14,000; HVAC, $9,000; water heater, $2,000. Then you just divided. Roof, $14,000 over 25 years. Well, that's $560 a year. HVAC, $9,000 over 15 years, $600 a year. The water heater, $2,000 over 10 years, $200 a year. Just those three systems, $1,360 per year, about $113 a month. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's it? $113? And that's the reaction I always get. And it's exactly the right one, because spread across time, it is manageable. But compressed into a crisis, it's $27,000 on a credit line. Here's where most people stop, though. They do the math, they nod, they think, that makes sense. And then they close the spreadsheet and do nothing. The calculation alone changes nothing. The behavior is what changes the experience. So instead of stopping at the math, open a separate account. Now, not your emergency fund, not your checking account, a dedicated house reserve account. Automate $150 a month into it every month, whether something breaks or not. It leaves your checking account automatically. The same way insurance does, the same way utilities do. You stop treating life cycle cost as a future surprise. You start treating it as an operating expense. Now, fast forward to 2022, hot water heater fails. You pay for it from reserves. It's inconvenient, but it's not destabilizing. Same house, same failure, completely different experience. And nobody's calling it a money pit. This compounds when you're managing rental properties. I spent years in property management managing portfolios, hundreds of units, multiple buildings at a time. And I used to watch this exact pattern play out at scale over and over again. An ownership group would look at their rent roll every month. Numbers looked solid, cash flow appeared healthy, but the systems across the portfolio were aging in the same direction. And when that convergence window arrived, it didn't arrive at one building, it arrived everywhere at once. None of it planned for. All of it arriving as a series of emergencies. The rent checks kept arriving every month, and the capital exposure was invisible until it wasn't. I tried to get boards to sign maintenance contracts that would have prevented emergency replacements. $15,000 a year to protect a $200,000 asset. They'd push back every time. The balance sheets look cleaner without it. And then the boiler would fail every time. What I watched in those boardrooms is the same thing happening in living rooms across the country. Different scale, identical pattern. This also changes how you evaluate a property before you ever sign anything. Most people evaluate a house on listing price, neighborhood, payment, layout. What almost nobody is asking is, what is the system age profile of the property, and when does its convergence window arrive relative to when I'll be living in the house? A house at $350,000 with a 10-year-old roof and a 12-year-old HVAC is a different financial object than a house at $365,000 with systems replaced in the last 2 years. Now, run the capital replacement timeline on both, and the less expensive house might cost you $25,000 to $35,000 more in the first decade of ownership. That $15,000 listing price difference isn't savings. It's a down payment on future stress. Nobody in that transaction is running this math for you. Not the agent, not the inspector, not the lender. They all have jobs to do, and buying the house is the finish line. Now, you're the only person in that room with an incentive to see the full picture. So here's the reframe. Stop thinking of system failures as events. Start thinking of system replacements as a cost that's already allocated. The HVAC didn't fail on you. It completed its lifespan. The replacement cost was always owed. You just hadn't paid it yet. The only variable was whether money was waiting when it arrived. When you make that shift, the emotional experience of ownership changes. That $9,000 bill stops being a catastrophe, becomes a scheduled expense that just arrived, one that had the money waiting for it. Zoom out, see the life cycle, plan for the window. The house isn't a money pit. It's a 20-year asset that needed a 20-year plan. The people who own property without this framework, they're not careless. They're not bad with money. They were handed the wrong lens at closing, and nobody ever offered them a better one. That's what this channel is about. You now understand the convergence window. You understand that systems age together, that the clustering isn't bad luck, it's physics. You understand that a reserve account isn't optional. It's the mechanism that turns a lifestyle cost into a managed expense instead of a crisis. That puts you in a different category of owner, not because anything about your property changed, because your relationship to it did. If this landed, share it with somebody who keeps calling their house a money pit. They haven't seen this yet, and it might be exactly what changes their week. Drop a comment. I read them. Tell me how old your HVAC is or your roof. I want to know where people are actually sitting in their own convergence window. Subscribe if you want to keep going. This channel is for people who are done being caught off guard by a house that they own.